Okay, folks, welcome to the Penacook Village Association's annual meeting. It's great to see you all out here tonight. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Brent Todd, president of the PVA, and we wanted to have a couple quick announcements here. We're going to do about 10 minutes of PVA business, and then we're going to get to our special guest. So we'll get started here with a couple of thank yous. First of all, thank you to the Merrimack Valley School District for once again hosting us here tonight and supplying the meeting space for us. Thank you to our friends at Concord TV for recording this, so folks that weren't able to attend will be able to watch this program. And thank you to the PVA board members. And can I have a show of hands of the PVA board members here tonight? Thank you very much for your service on the board. I really appreciate it very much. I just want to remind folks of this is my opportunity to remind folks of the Penacook Village Association's mission and vision statement. So the mission statement is to involve citizens in enhancing the quality of life, protecting the historic character, and fostering economic vitality in Penacook Village. And the vision statement is to build community through a voluntary association that connects neighbors, shares neighborhood information, and promotes activities and civic involvement in the village. I think this meeting here tonight is a great example of the PVA carrying out their mission and vision statement. So the first order of business that we'd like to get to is election of board members, and all dues-paying board members in the audience tonight can vote, so you can just raise your hand when it's time and cast your votes here. Because we have two members who are retiring from the board tonight. One is Jennifer Craig, and we want to thank her for her service and dedication and enthusiasm toward Penacook over the years. And the other is Terry Maxwell. She's been a board member and treasurer for many years. Terry is one of these sort of behind-the-scenes people. You don't really see her a lot, but without her, we would not have a solvent organization. She's been really reliable, very trustworthy, hardworking. She's just put in countless hours for the Penacook Village Association and thereby for the community of Penacook. So we all owe her a great gratitude and for all her dedication and service. And Terry, just in honor of this so that you can remember us when you're off the board, we have just a little item here for you. So I just have this if you want to come up and accept this and with our thanks. See, you thought it was one of the props that we have back here, right? Is that something from the school? No.
See it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
well,
much.
Thank you, Terry. We really very much appreciate all your dedication.
My term on the board.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a couple of members who are actually going to agree to stay on, and I'm going to list their names now. The members who are going to re-up their terms on the board are Al Brack, Paula Miner, Carol Palmer-Zumbrunnen, Steve Shurtleff, and myself, Brent Todd. To fill the two positions that are vacating, we have two nominees recommended by the nominating committee. One is Anna Glover, and Anna's been working many years also behind the scenes, helping us maintain the web page. And so she's expressed interest. And then we have Cindy Jakes, and you'll remember maybe Cindy from the great work that she did organizing the Memorial Day Parade earlier this year. So those are the two nominees. If I could have a motion to approve all 7 of those individual board members for 2 years terms.
So moved.
And second? Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Super. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the board members. A note to the board members also that after this meeting is over, we'll meet separately, just maybe in the back of the room, to elect officers and also conduct a little bit of additional business. So I would like at this time to invite up Christine Miller, who is one of our board members, and she's also the representative of the Hazard Mitigation Committee, where she's been putting in many, many hours. How many meetings are you up to now? 18? 17 meetings already. But it's important work, and I'd like to have her talk to you about it a little bit. So you want to come on up?
This is the first 35 pages of the Hazard Mitigation Committee draft report of the 334 pages that I didn't print out. But you're welcome to look at this, and I'll leave it because it talks about what the hazard mitigation plan is, which I had no idea. It's on the website for the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, which is www.cnhrpc.org. But there is, part of the reason I'm talking about this is there is a public hearing on the 21st, right? From 9 to 11 at the Fire Department Training Administration Office, which is in the building that says Waterworks, just to further confuse you, which is at 24 Horseshoe Pond. And what the point of the committee is to identify potential hazards and then talk about what might be done to avoid those hazards. Hazards like floods, mudslides, lightning strikes. Mostly they're natural occurrences, and there are hundreds of them. And everybody from city departments, Mike's on the person from NHTI, security person from St. Paul's, it's everybody in Concord who has anything to do with any kind of potential hazard. And then there were public members. And so they asked the PVA for a public member, and Brent asked me, and I didn't know enough to say no. So here we are. But it's every 5 years, and I encourage you to look at it because I'm sure I don't know every single hazard in Penacook. So if there are others, they can be added to it. And that's it. Anybody have any questions? I'll leave the beginnings of what it's all about on the back table.
The next item is what you're all really been here for and waiting for, I'm sure. And before we do that, I just want to recognize that we do have a couple of city councilors here tonight. We have Councilor Earl Pierce and we have Councilor Stacy Brown, so thank you both for coming as well. I now get to introduce Matt Walsh. Matt, you may know Matt as Concord's Director of Redevelopment, Downtown Services, and Special Projects, but he's really now also interim Deputy City Manager for Community Development. And so my question, of course, is, well, what doesn't he do? And the answer is there's not much he doesn't do. And that may not be great for his personal schedule, but it's really terrific for us and for Penacook especially. Matt has been a long time, I consider him to have been a long time friend to Penacook, and he's just been involved in so many projects that have happened here. His diligence, his hard work, and his care for the community really show. And I think it'll show tonight when he gives you the update on several items that we're interested in finding out about that are going to be going on or upcoming in Penacook. So with no further ado, Mr. Matt Walsh. Let's give him a round of applause.
Well, good evening, everybody, and happy holidays to you. Let's see if I can actually get the projector to work here. It's a pleasure to be here before you again during the holiday season. I hope the tree lighting went well last night. Very good. And the start of head cold season, so here we are. But it's nice to see all of you. The topics that I have for you tonight are up on the screen. We're going to talk a little bit about Whitney Road and what's happening up there, Penacook Landing Phase 2, the Canal Street Riverfront Park. You probably are aware of the Boys and Girls Club's new project and the potential new Penacook Branch Library and Community Center. And we'll close it out with a discussion about the paving program. And then if you have any questions at all for me, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you as we get through there if there's anything in here you want to talk about that I did not cover tonight. So the Whitney Road Public-Private Partnership, you're all aware of where this is. This is a 43-acre tract of land that was owned by Interchange Development. It's now owned by them and others. On Whitney Road, this is US Route 4. This is I-93, exit 17. This is the town line. So on this side of the line is Concord. The other side of the line is Canterbury. And Laurie and David Rossio had long had plans to develop this site and came to the city, and the city struck a public-private partnership with them. I want to say in April of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been April 2020. to do a large regional development of service uses, commercial uses, retail, a little bit of industrial. And in order to facilitate that project, there was a need for a significant off-site improvement to US Route 4, Hoyt Road, which involved the construction of a hybrid two-lane roundabout, as well as improvements to Whitney Road, which included another small roundabout there. This is just to orient you, that's the Concord Crossing building. The partnership came together, and that's what it looks like today. So, very successful project. How many people have been to Market Basket? I wish I had a camera when I asked that question. So it's been a success. The project is more than a $5 million investment. Lori and David Rossio agreed to build all of the improvements for their development here, which involved Market Basket and others. They've also are picking up the cost of the improvements that are located in Canterbury. The project is now substantially complete. We do have a couple of punch list items that we're waiting on, including some overhead signs that need to go over US Route 4, which are delayed because of supply chain issues with COVID. But it's come out very, very well. We have some other punch list items too that we need to take care of, including a sign that belongs at Concord Crossing. So as you know, since you've all been to Market Basket, there's a Home Goods, the liquor store. That's phase one. Additional phases of the project are already underway. The new Wendy's has been completed and is there. And there's a current building that's under construction, which I'll get to here in a second. Maybe I'll just fast forward. That's the Wendy's. Not a bad looking restaurant at all. And the current project that's underway is about a 6,000 square foot multi-tenant building. It's going to be Service Credit Union, a Jersey Mike's, and they are looking for the third tenant for the third door to the building. So that is underway today. They continue to get strong interest. I don't want to speak for Lori and David, and I don't think I saw them here. They continue to get strong interest in the development up there. There's interest for urgent care, medical offices potentially. Some interest potentially for the industrial parcel, so good interest. This is their current updated master plan for the site, so just to kind of show you a little bit here. So the Market Basket and the Home Goods, the liquor store. This is the Wendy's. This is the 6,000 square foot multi-tenant building that's under construction. There's discussion of medical office and urgent care, another large retailer potentially. And also, they're looking for a restaurant tenant and another multi-tenant building up here. So things are going well for them. This is the best graphic I have, and I apologize for this, but further down on Whitney Road, they are going through, Lori and David, or through another company, are going through a permitting process right now. This is on the same side as Concord Crossing, going towards Boyce Highlands. And there is a vacant area of land on that side of the road. This is a proposal for a drive-through restaurant, a potential coffee shop, and also a drive-through, I believe it's pharmacy. So those are in the works right now and literally going before the city's planning board as we speak. So that's Penacook, that is the Whitney Road update. So Penacook Landing Phase 2, this is the Caleb project down on Canal Street. So everybody knows the history of this site. It's the former Allied Leather Tannery site, which the city has a long history on. But we sold 2.5 acres of it to the Caleb Group in September of 2019. The city entered into a deal with them in 2017. Phase 1 is a 34-unit building, which was completed in 2020. The city supported that project by getting some grant funds that we used to complete some demolition at the site, as well as to construct a sewer pump station that serves that particular property because it needed the pump station in order to access the sewer that's in Canal Street. And the project's been completed and it looks good. It's a nice addition. And as we've talked about before, they tried to come up with some architecture that was, reminiscent of the former mill building that was there, the Penacook Mill, which is up above, which collapsed in 2007, 2008. Just an up-close version of what that looks like. And this is what the interior of those units look like. So they're very nice units, quality units, a nice addition to the community. Phase 2 of the project is located here. So this is Canal Street. This is Crescent Street. It's going to be right in that yellow box. It's right there. It is a 20,000 square foot building with 20 units of housing. Does anybody want to guess what the construction or the total development budget is for that project? How much?
I hate to think.
Hate to think is not a bad answer. It's about a $6.2 million project, which is more than $300,000 a unit. So when you think about, you hear challenges in the development community about what's going on, what things cost, all of this. It's a very challenging time to do construction, and they were fortunate that they've been supported by the city. The city actually has a $600,000 loan. The city has a loan program, believe it or not. So we have $600,000 of money into this on a 30-year, 20-year note at 3%. To help get the project done. They were also lucky that they received some funding from, you probably heard of Governor Sununu's Invest New Hampshire program. And they got just under $700,000 for this project. So if you drive down Crescent Street today, that's what you're going to see. They're at foundation. They're trying to get out of the ground so they can start doing the superstructure as we go through the winter. And they anticipate that the project will be done sometime in the early fall of 2023. So that's where that project is today. The Canal Street Riverfront Park project, also involving the former Allied Leather Tannery site. So I've shown this picture more times than I can count, and I keep showing it because I think it's important to remember where we started. So this is what the Allied Leather Tannery site in Concord looked like when the city first got involved with it back in 2002 and 2003. When we condemned it in 2002 and started buying up the properties that you see here, ultimately we'd end up buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different parcels that comprised about 6.5 acres of Allied Leather, as well as the original Penacook Electric Light Complex, which is right here behind Chief's Restaurant. Ever since the 1980s, and the tannery closed in '87, but the city's had a vision of trying to develop public access and park space along the Penacook River. One of the things that makes Penacook so special, and there are many things, but the proximity and the ability to access the river. And that is really unique and special, and Penacook is blessed to have that. So we've had a plan since 1986 to try and do that. That plan was carried forward when the city did a Penacook Village charrette to try to figure out what to do with the tannery site in the old Penacook Mill. And those are the graphics from that document there that talked about, hey, if the site gets redeveloped, we should have riverfront park access there. It was carried forward again in the city's 2015 village plan. And it's important that, to understand that, this has been carried forward from the 80s, but it's also important to understand how it fits in within the context of everything else. So the other thing that makes Penacook, that's a real advantage for Penacook and will be forever, is you have the opportunity to create this network. And I've used the Frederick Law Olmsted language of an emerald necklace. Other people have called it the pearl necklace of Penacook, of being able to have all this access to riverfront, and then up behind Rivco when that gets redeveloped someday, and then ultimately connect to the Northern Rail Trail, which will someday get to Penacook and continue on up to go to Lebanon. But you also have the Electric Avenue, down at the Island Park. You also have Rolfe Park. So you have this tremendous network that can exist, is partially existing, and can be developed over time, which is going to be a real boon. But our site that we're talking about is right here, so that's how it fits into it. This is the Riverfront Park over on Tanner Street, Walnut Street Park, which is an undeveloped parcel. We have more riverfront here over by where the Double Bridge Dam is, the Lower Falls, and then on the way over to going towards Hannah Dustin Island and the Northern Rail Trail. So The site today, pretty much, you're already familiar with the medical office building that was developed in partnership with the city and DEW back in 2011. I would note that the rear portion of the building has been sold and is being renovated into office space, is my understanding. And I believe it's going to be a tenant that's going to be relocating from downtown Concord, but I'm not going to tell you any more than that. But think about that, though. You now have tenants that are relocating from downtown Concord to Penacook, which is a nice achievement. So you have that site. You already know about the Caleb site. So our park site here, and if you were here in June, I think we came over on June 20th for a neighborhood meeting. But we have about a 2-acre site. It goes from Chiefs in the apartment building, the Canal Street Municipal parking lot, on over to just off of the Caleb building, on up to the Briar Hydro, Essex Hydro facility. It has about 515 feet of frontage on the Penacook River. And is ready for development. It went through a final cleanup in 2013 and 14 with the US EPA and DES, the Department of Environmental Services with the state. And as part of that cleanup, as we talked about, if you were here in June, part of the site has a cap on it for some buried materials. It's a combination of leather, urban fill, wood, things of that nature. Basically whatever they could find back right around World War II to throw into the river so they could move the river where they wanted it to be at that time. So that's what's underneath there. But the leather scraps are the part that's a little bit tricky. Even though this material's on the site, it's perfectly safe to have a public park here, so there's no public health risk, but it is a design consideration. So the cap itself is the area in pink. Again, you can see, the Chiefs is here, the Caleb site is there. That's the cap. It's about an acre. And we're restricted on what we can do on the cap. We can have walkways, we can have landscaping, we can have lighting, certain things like that, but we really can't have any structures on there that are going to be that are going to require a foundation, that are going to be occupied by people. As we've been designing the park, it's kind of similar to what I showed you earlier, but we're very cognizant of trying to make sure that the park fits in with that network of green open spaces and recreational assets that I mentioned earlier. The park is literally about a half a mile or so from where the Northern Rail Trail is going to come up through to Penacook Village. So we've been trying to accommodate that. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. I will tell you that the city, as you all know, had a purchase and sale agreement with Pan Am to acquire this, but under state law, to acquire the land that basically we need to do the Northern Rail Trail from the Penacook River all the way down to Horseshoe Pond in downtown Concord. But after negotiating that and executing it, the state of New Hampshire enacted its right of first refusal under state law to jump in and supplant themselves into the transaction. Since that happened, two things have occurred. The first is Pan Am has been sold to CSX, so it's no longer Pan Am and it's all new players that are involved. That's problematic. The second piece is the city and the DOT have negotiated an agreement. It hasn't been approved by the governor or the executive council yet, but we've negotiated an agreement whereby we can move forward with DOT. We can work with them in partnership. We can negotiate a new purchase and sale agreement with CSX. That purchase and sale agreement will be assigned to the city of Concord. The city would then complete the transaction and own the real estate for the Northern Rail Trail, which is important. The state's interest in all of this and why they jumped in is, even though this rail line has been discontinued, it is still designated for high-speed rail by the federal government. So in the high-speed rail corridor, basically from Boston on up to Montreal. So the state's interest is they need to preserve that ability to have that, to establish the high-speed rail. When and if that ever occurs, we've reached an agreement with the state of the city will own the land, we will build the trail. In the event the state someday, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from now needs it, they can get it back from us, but there are provisions where they have to basically ensure connectivity of our trail. So everybody wins. But it's been a little bit of a delay in all of that. So that's a little more in the weeds than you probably want, but I figured somebody's going to ask me what's going on with this, so that's the answer. So recognizing that this will someday happen, and the folks at DOT are working on it, because I check on them every 45 days or so, we want to make sure that there's connectivity here for cyclists and pedestrians getting to Penacook Village. So this is our design. We came to you in June with 4 different concepts. We listened to what you had to say. We digested that. We went back, and this is what our architect has come up with. So just to orient you again, this is Village Street. This is Chiefs, Canal Street, the medical office building, and the new mystery tenant that's moving from downtown, Crescent Street. This is phase 2 of Penacook Landing that's being built right now. What we're going to do is we are going to expand the parking lot to, I think the count is somewhere just around 30 spaces, a little bit under that. A certain number of these spaces are allocated by agreement with chiefs and the owners of the apartment buildings. There's about 15 of those spaces that go there, but the rest of them are going to be available for public parking. There is going to be a new dumpster enclosure to support those adjacent buildings to try and clean up what that looks like over there now. That's also an agreement that we have with them. There is going to be a new pavilion. This pavilion is approximately 30 by 60. Timber construction, hopefully with 1 restroom in it, a permanent restroom, for whatever recreational programming or special events that the community may want to have there. With that in mind, there is a knoll that's been built on top of the cap that will create the ability to have essentially an amphitheater. And there's 2 rows of seating here, if you can see those, which are made out of, at this point, we believe granite block, which will be similar to what the tannery, the Penacook Mill building used to be. There is, we're contemplating a walkway to support the private parking, if you will, to serve these 2 buildings, because we have agreements to provide pedestrian access to the apartment building. There is a large pier that is cantilevered over the Penacook River. The pier is purposely shaped like a canoe. One of the things that we're trying to do is embrace all of the history that is associated with human interaction on the Penacook River going back to indigenous peoples forward. So one of our nods to that is the shape of this particular pier that's going to be there. There are extensive walkways on the property that meander through to another scenic overlook that's going to be built on top of the little concrete block pump house that is here. The pump house will go away. The mechanicals inside the pump house will be salvaged and turned into a passive park for children. It is an eyesore. It is. There's going to be another bit of a paved area here for scenic for people to view as well. You can tell this area is a little devoid of landscaping. That is intentional. We have agreements with Briar Hydro. I know Bill's here. Bill, you haven't seen this yet, so I'm sorry. Here you are for the first time. But we have agreements to try. They have a large wing wall for their dam here that they need access to. They also need access to other parts of the property. So this is our trying to recognize that they need to bring in heavy equipment occasionally, and we don't want to see the park infrastructure get destroyed by that. We don't want to hinder their ability to do that either. There is a walkway that would go through the backside of the Caleb property to go back to Crescent Street. They have a very circuitous drainage system that goes through here, so there's a little bit of a bridge to get over that, and the path goes down the spine. We need to talk to the Caleb group about that to see how they feel. We're also discussing the potential of streetscape improvements to Canal Street. So right now, Canal Street is built very much like a suburban collector roadway. You know, it encourages people to go fast. There's no real on-street parking on it until you get down closer to Village Street. And the thought is to try and make this more of a village scale, recognizing we now have the park here, and we're hopeful that people will be coming up from the Northern Rail Trail either via Merrimack Street, which is off of the map here, or through Walnut Street. And as part of that improvement, we are proposing a very wide sidewalk, which would also double as a bicycle lane. So when and if people do ride up from on the Merrimack River Greenway Trail, And this is very similar to what we just did on Route 4 at exit 17. There would be a 10-foot wide or so multi-purpose path, which would also be a sidewalk, to allow that to happen. We're contemplating adding on-street parking, narrowing up the street. The travel lanes will still be about 11 feet wide, which is our standard, but to try and make that more of a village feel instead of more of a suburban feel as it's been over time. So that's where we are with the park. Lots of landscaping. This is about a 50% complete drawing. We still need to talk to our neighbors, so we need to go talk to Bill and his coworkers. We still need to talk to chiefs and the owners of 350 Village Street, the old theater apartment building, and Caleb. But this is the direction we're moving in. As far as cost and budget of all of this, we already have an appropriation for design, which was all impact fee money paid by private development. Our working construction budget is about $1.75 million. We're going to be confirming that next week when we get our first cost estimate based on this plan. You can see the funding sources that are there. We're also applying for some land and water conservation funds at the end of next week for $500,000. We're optimistic that will be successful. The state, the folks who actually award those grants seem very enthusiastic about our project. The rest of the funds have already been appropriated by the council. We recently, on November 18th, we hired Milestone Construction of Concord, New Hampshire to be our construction manager for this. They were selected through a quals-based competitive process. If all comes together, we're looking to start construction next summer, and we're hoping to finish the following spring. So that's where that is. The Boys and Girls Club project, which people have been to community meetings for Boys and Girls Club? How many people have heard about it? Yes, sort of. Not as many people have been to Market Basket. Okay. So where to begin? So we're going to begin where we are today. So this is our current Penacook Branch Library. It was built in 1899, originally as a police station. Somebody, I think it was Christine, that made the comment about, the city has buildings that, the fire station is the waterworks building, the library is the police station. This is just the way the city operates. It makes it as a scavenger hunt, and only the true Concordites really know where anything is because of that. But it became a library in 1947. Essentially, only the ground floor is really usable. It's not ADA compliant. There is a ramp that's on the front of the building, which is in poor condition. The rest of the building inside is not compliant. It's been open approximately 10 hours a week. It was closed during the pandemic. There was a needs assessment that was done in 2020 that identified a laundry list of issues. And the estimate to deal with those issues at that time was about $917,000 for 2021. We have not updated that cost estimate, but with the way the construction market is, it's going to be higher than that. So we got a call from Chris Eman last winter saying that the Boys and Girls Club and Penacook Community Center are merging. And Chris had reached out about potential city funds or funds that the city can access to help support the project, something called Community Development Block Grants. And during that conversation, we said, hey, Chris, the city has operated a library up here for a long time. Is there a way that we can do a partnership on a library? Maybe we can rent space from you for a certain period of time each week. It would be a revenue source for you. It'd be beneficial probably for the kids that come to your facility. It could check a lot of boxes. It could be a win-win for everybody. Nice. And for that, unfortunately, the vision of just renting, their function space in the building isn't viable because of their licensing for the facility. But then the conversation kind of pivoted to, well, gee, maybe additional space could be added onto the building, and the city could lease it. And that conversation pivoted from leasing it to buying it. So that's what the conversation has been really since last February, and things have moved pretty quickly. But this is the current facility. The Boys and Girls Club owns 4 properties that are over here, framed by Community Drive, Dolphin Street, and High Street. All of those buildings would be demolished. I think they're in the process of prepping them for demolition now. Have they actually started? Anybody live across the street, seen anything yet? Not yet. They're still there? Okay. So they're getting ready to demolish, and I think the demolition is actually going to happen over the winter here, but they're being prepped. Unfortunately, this is the best graphic I could find here, but essentially your 4-acre site is going to be this. There's going to be a new 8,900 square foot building or so, of which the city is planning to acquire about 1,500 square feet of that, so we can talk about that in a second. There's going to be new parking put in the front of the building. The current community center building is kind of like right here. And what they're going to do is move the building to the back of the lot and put parking in the front. And this is an outdoor playground for the Boys and Girls Club on this end of the building. As part of the project, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the city's going to be up in Penacook Village next spring, summer, and fall, paving nearly 4 miles of roadway throughout the city. So one of those roads is Dolphin Street that's going to get fully reconstructed. So the Boys and Girls Club, in addition to partnering on this space, are partnering on a sidewalk improvement that will get rid of that continuous curb cut that we have along the frontage of the property right here. That will go away, and it will be replaced by a new sidewalk, but there will also be on-street parallel parking right here in front of the sidewalk. So that's what that is. The sidewalk's about $60,000 by itself. This is the Boys and Girls Club. The renderings are still in flux, so this is what they have come up with based on meetings with the community over the last several months. You're looking at this from the intersection of Dolphin and Community Drive. So the city space would be on the end. That's our 1,500 square feet or so. And then the Boys and Girls Club is the balance of the property. The design, I said, as I mentioned, is a work in progress. So this has been updated a little bit based on the city's request for the space over here. We asked to get rid of an entrance on the side that was facing Rolfe Park, and we're only going to have one entrance. So the porch roof has been modified because of that. This is too technical, but this is the floor plan. Essentially, what the space for the city is going to be is about a 900 or so, just under 1,000 square foot space that's going to be open like a classroom. And if you've been to the citywide community center on Canterbury Road, where we have library services up there with the community center, we have a similar model where we take one of the large function multi-purpose rooms at the community center on the Heights. We convert it for library operations. The same thing would happen here. So this space would be occupied by both recreational and library programming. There's a large closet where all the library stuff will be moved into when it's not being used. There's a small kitchenette, 2 restrooms, and then a janitorial closet. So it's a basic space, but it's a very functional space, and it actually gives us a little more usable space than what we currently have now over on Merrimack Street. So the numbers are this. We estimate that the capital request to the City Council, which I should note that the City Council is talking about this on December 12th, so maybe I'll start there. There's a purchase and sale agreement and appropriation requests for funds that are going to be going to public hearing on Monday night with the City Council at 7 o'clock. So if you want to talk to the council about this more, you're welcome to come. The capital budget to get this developed and purchased and fit up and equipped is about $1.3 million. The purchase price is a little more than $1 million. It's a little bit of a fluid number because it's going to be based on a formula of what it actually cost the Boys and Girls Club to develop this. So the Boys and Girls Club is going to be a developer. It's a role that they're not used to. They've really stepped up to be this, even though I think they're unfamiliar with it, but they've been really great about it. But it's going to be a little more than $1 million. The operating budget could be as high as $108,000. That's for recreational and library programming. This library programming number assumes 28 hours a week, so you're aware of that. Also, because we're purchasing this through a condominium, we're going to have certain condominium fees that are buried into that annual number, as well as other things. There's a $25,000 a year book budget in there, for example. That's one of the reasons why that number's a little high. The debt service numbers, so the debt service, if it's 20 years at 6%, because that's kind of where the interest rate markets are right now, it's going to be somewhere around $142,000 in year one for debt. It's going to be about $106,000 a year on average over 20 years. If you add the debt service cost with the operating costs, it's about a $255,000 investment for the city annually. City Council will make a decision Monday night. Construction's supposed to start in the spring. We're anticipating substantial completion sometime in the spring of '24, and we think we'll be in there probably shortly after Labor Day, maybe sooner, but Labor Day of 2024. So what becomes of the old facility? Well, it's important to the community. It's an iconic building. It's a civic building. It's got important history. This is what it used to look like before the handicap ramp was added onto it back in the day. This is shortly after it was completed. We will market the property for redevelopment. And because the property is basically the building itself, there's really no opportunity for doing anything relative to parking. There is on-street parking that's permitted through here. But typically, most developers and their lenders are going to want to see some sort of a plan for parking for the property. So the city's also considering selling with it as a package the triangle that we own down at the corner of Sanders and Merrimack Street to provide a couple of parking spaces to go with it. We feel that the highest and best use is either going to be residential, it could be a couple units of housing, or potentially mixed use. We could see a scenario where somebody does commercial on the ground floor and maybe an apartment upstairs. The jail cells are still in the basement, so I think it's an interesting selling point for people who want a really unique property. That was, the police station, that was then the library, and now it can be your house, but you get the jail cells to go with it. There are 2 cells, so if, people with 2 children, it's the way to go. Or you can double them up. If you have 4 kids, you can make that work too. So the benefits of this, it's a single floor plan, which is important for accessibility. We won't have any of the ADA issues that we have right now with the current facility. Square footage wise, it is larger for what we actually use. It's got great proximity to Rolfe Park and the Merrimack Valley School District campus. So there's a real we run programming in Rolfe Park. We could do more programming in Rolfe Park, and it gives us the opportunity of, okay, kids, we're doing summer camp or tennis camp, we're doing tennis camp or soccer camp or pickleball camp, whatever we're doing, we can all go across the street, we can go inside, we can have lunch, we can use the bathrooms, we can go back across the street to the park. There's a synergy with the Boys and Girls Club because of the programming that the city offers with the library in Parks and Rec, so we think that's good for the kids that go to the Boys and Girls Club program. There's parking. The property's already tax exempt, so there's no change in taxable status. There's no loss of tax revenue for Penacook or the Merrimack Valley School District or the city. And it creates an opportunity for us to redevelop the existing branch library in a way that we hope will support ongoing efforts to redevelop the village. The last one I have for you is the annual highway program, which is, with the exception of, I think, 3 streets in the city, everything else is in Penacook. So I went to the engineering office and said, I need a map of what we're going to be paving in Penacook. And they gave me this. And I said, maybe we should do a map of what we're not paving in Penacook because it might be easier. But here's what we're doing. So it's about 3.77 miles of roadway. It is the village proper. We're doing Merrimack Street. We're doing portions of Canal Street, which will go along with the park project. We are doing, all the areas around here where we are tonight. So, Dolphin Street is there, Winter Street is there, Stark Street is there, Bonnie Street is there, Broder, Barnett is there. Yep. It's a roller coaster. We're going to go out and we're going to do parts of Electric Avenue and Elliott Street. We're going to do, is that Sweat Street that's up there? Yes. Let's see here. Yep, Summer Street's being done, Steeple View's being done, Shaw's being done, Coral's being done, Tanner Street's being done.
High Street's not being done, Wendy. High Street is not being done.
High Street is not being done. No. Somehow that escaped us. So this is my way of saying it's wonderful and good, and these streets need to be done. They're in desperate need of being done. This is the total road program for next year. Not all 2.655 is being spent up here, but I would say 90% of that is. But, so we're going to need your help. There's going to be a lot of road work happening next spring, summer, and fall. We're going to need your patience, but like with everything else, we think it's going to be worth it when we're done. Related to that, the city has a tree subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, and they're going to be working with General Services to come up here and hopefully add street trees to these roadways that are being repaved. So they've been up scouting out locations. They're going to be contacting property owners to ask to see if they want to partner. The city provides a lot of financial support to do this and actually gets the tree set in the ground for the property owner. So we're trying to take a more complete street approach to when we come through and do some of these neighborhood streets if there are property owners that would like to add street trees to their properties. Related to all of this, and if you were at this public meeting back in October, here's a quick update. So we are also looking at realigning the intersection of Lilac Street and Borough Road. It's a Y configuration right now. There was a neighborhood meeting, I want to say on October 6th, and there were some comments that came back to us, and after looking at those comments from the community, we believe it would be appropriate to do a little removal of vegetarians, excuse me. My significant other's a vegetarian. She'd be very upset with me right now. Vegetation, I blame the cold medicine. Vegetation through here that's in the right of way. Most of that is bittersweet, and we're talking with that property owner now. Removal of the slip lane, adding some arrow signage here, and we've widened out the throat of this a little bit and added some granite curbing through here to also better define all of this for the community. So there's a report going to the city council on Monday night as well. It's a consent report, which means it's not discussed as a public hearing. To say, city council, this is the engineering division of community development looked at this. We've revised the plan a little bit. Here's our current plan. If you want us to proceed, let us know. If you don't want us to proceed, let us know. So the council will get briefed on that on Monday.
Excuse me, Matt, can you just say that again about the action with the city council about this?
So there is a report that the engineering office has written that it's going to city council on Monday night. It's something called a consent report, which means it's a report that's on the consent agenda. The council can accept it without discussion, or members of the council can pull it off and discuss it. So we're going back to the council. It's a formality to say, we had the meeting in October. The concerns were this. We looked at those concerns. Here's how we've revised things. City council, this is what we intend to do. If you want us to do something different, or if you want to discuss this, please let us know. So that's what that is on Monday. It's not a public hearing. Yes, I should stress, not a public hearing. Not a public hearing. And that's the end. So that's what I think is going on in Penacook. Are there questions?
Just as a comparison, so you said it's going to be $6.2 million for the new 20 units.
Yep.
What did the 34 cost?
The 34 cost, their budget was somewhere, I want to say, in the fours, the mid to high fours.
And is the rent going to be the same?
It is. The rent's established by essentially the federal government, working with the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and the rent is the same. Yep. Yep.
What is the rent?
It's it depends on your household size and your income. So it's less than what the market rent would be.
Is it like Rosemary?
Yes. Yes. Yep. Similar. Yep. Yep.
So I want to go to the community center library. You said the library or the community center is going to be open 28 hours?
So the budget that I showed, that was about $108,000 of operating cost, assumed a staff person for 28 hours at the library.
At the library?
For the library, yeah.
So how many books does the library have now?
I cannot answer that question.
10,000.
How many is it going to have?
2,000.
Okay,
That's a rough estimate. Could be as much as 4. But 2.
okay.
And is that because of storage restrictions? Being able to put it away, or? Because it's the size and it's on carts.
Yeah, yeah, it has to be mobile.
But it will be made to look like a library. So it's going to look like a closet. That's what I've been told.
When
So
it
is
come-
that,
When
is-
they come out of the closet.
But there will be shelving on the walls too, as well, so that it'll look like a library when you look in the windows.
But those books won't be on.
The books that are on the cart will be in the closet.
No, on the shelves.
No, the
Okay.
books that are on the shelves will be on the shelves.
I was confusing.
It's just,
I don't think
so
so,
it's
no.
like, it's like mobile, so like when the space
It's
is
like the
being
one at the
used,
Heights
you'll be
sort
able
of
to
thing.
put,
You
yeah.
have to look at the pictures of the ones at the Heights.
So they're on like roll.
Okay, but okay,
But it's 10 to 2.
10,000 books to
10,000 items you can check out of the library.
2.
So some of those items would be like books on tape, so they don't take up as much space.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Wendy.
So will the city rent out the space then, or is Parks and Rec going to use it for?
Is there gonna be a community room that the community can use?
So they're talking about, it potentially could be both. I think Parks and Rec, their model is they have, if you go to like the citywide community center on Canterbury Road, you can rent a facility there. You can also, they also, keep the space and they operate it. So the potential exists for both, yeah.
I appreciate that the park includes like a restroom.
Yes.
So does the Sewell Falls Recreation Area. I think there's 2. They're never open. They're in bad condition. What are you going to do to prevent that from happening?
So that's the challenge for public restrooms. For example, the city has a public restroom in downtown adjacent to the Margaritas at Bicentennial Square, which is open a handful of time. So we haven't, if we're going to include the restroom, which we're showing it now, we think it's important, but we need to figure out how we're going to manage it. And if it's only going to be managed when there is formal programming happening at the park, or if we are going to allow it to be open otherwise. So it is a management issue that we have to work out, and I don't have a complete answer for you yet.
Also, as regards to the cap,
Yes,
is there groundwater monitoring for the, like the landfill?
there is, yes. There's a groundwater management permit with the state of New Hampshire. We monitor for 2 things, chromium and PFAS and PFOA. And those are the 2 things that we look for up there. Both of them have been well within standard. It's probably one of these things that we're going to have to monitor for indefinitely, though, because of the choices that folks made back after the 1940s. Which I should have brought a picture with you because I manage. Is Ruth Speed here by any chance? She runs a Facebook page for Penacook Village, and I couldn't sleep one night. And at 2 in the morning, I found some great photos of bulldozers actually in the middle of the Penacook River, filling it where we are right now. And that was very enlightening to find pictures of, cats and cat dozers in the middle of the river, just dumping stuff in. It was crazy. But
Not arsenic?
say it again?
Not arsenic?
No, not arsenic. Nope. The issue is chromium. Yep, chromium was heavily used in tanning of leather. Yep, but not arsenic.
Arsenic is also naturally occurring in a lot of the lakes
Yep.
and the groundwater.
Yep.
That's why.
Nope. Yep. The only 2 things we need are PFAS and chromium. Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I just did a tour with the library director, Todd Fabian, and he showed me that the lawn space is actually the space that the city owns, not that corner piece. So you have the building, then there's the White House next to it, and then the lawn space is actually what's owned by the city and not that highlighted corner piece.
The lawn space.
If you go back and you show the satellite image of the library,
Oh.
the 3 Merrimack Street,
Yep. 3 Merrimack. Oh, I'm sorry. The
yeah.
apologies. This one. Yep.
Yep, so that pink highlighted space is not owned by the city. If you go down, not the next space next to it, but the space actually right in the middle, yes, that is owned by the city.
That's not my understanding, but.
That was what the library director showed me, us,
Okay.
last week.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
I have a quick question. When they decided on the plan for the Boys and Girls Club, I would assume during the summer they're going to, those daycare programs will utilize Rolfe Park too, but yet the city library is on the community drive side and the children's playground is on the High Street side, and I'm curious why it wasn't the other way around, so that the children would be closer to Rolfe Park.
I think they actually have, I don't know what their intentions are for, the Boys and Girls Club's intentions are for using the park, but they were very specific that they wanted to build their own enclosed playground, which is here at the other end. And because the city does intend on using Rolfe Park to support recreational programming here. That's why we're on that end of the property.
Hi, thanks for all of this information. So I noticed in the discussion that I think was on the part, that $1 million and change has been tipped already. Has there been any attempts to revenue share with the Merrimack Valley School District?
It's already happening. So.
For that particular tip?
Yep, exactly. So I debated putting this slide in the presentation, and I chose not to, and I knew I was going to regret it. So here I am. But so as part of the budget that just began, the City Council is releasing a portion of assessed value that is essentially kicking off $50,000 to the City General Fund in the Merrimack Valley School District, the county, and the state of New Hampshire. And it's all, that $50,000 will be proportioned out over how the tax rate actually calculates.
So the 50,000 will be divided between the four?
That is correct, yep. But the school district's tax rate is, round numbers, probably in the 65% range of that number. So when we did the original Exit 17 project, we modeled that we were going to keep all the revenue and we were not going to revenue share. And then we ended up revisiting the pro forma, and the council endorsed the recommendation of releasing. So we're releasing now, and we intend to keep doing that going forward, and that number will grow. So this is the first year. It's unusual. Usually we don't do it when a TIF is still relatively in its infancy. I know the TIF was created back in 2010, but the expansion is still in its infancy. But that is happening. That number will grow over time. But
Well, I mean, the TIF grew.
Yep, it did.
2010.
It did. It grew. We added,
Exponentially.
about 240 acres or so. Yep, you're right. Yep. Other questions?
And so Matt, that exit 17 TIF district will always stay in Penacook? It won't ever leave our ward and go to another ward or something when they redistrict and move lines or whatever? You know what I'm saying, right?
I do. I had this mental image of the TIF district with legs walking around for a second. But I do understand what you're saying. So the district will always be where it's located today. It might change over time. It could shrink, it could expand, it could do other things. It could grow. But as far as, do you mean being part of Ward 1 or Ward 2? Or?
I'm thinking it would stay in Ward 1. The revenue would stay.
So the revenue, it's in the Merrimack Valley School District, right, if that answers the question. So yes, the revenue will come to, just like the other two TIF districts the city has are in the Concord School District. And when we release money out of those, we only release out of one of them actually. It goes to the Concord School District there. So yes.
If I understand your question, if some reconfiguration of part of Ward 2 became Ward 3,
Yep.
that's not going to change the TIF district?
It will not.
Okay.
It will not.
Is that
I just know that someone said to me, you just better remember that in 10 years when they have to do the census again or they do whatever, that they don't change the lines and you lose this out of Ward 1. Don't let them put this in Ward, some other ward. And I don't know, I'm just
I think that's
third
apples and
person.
oranges.
Yeah, I don't think the redistricting that happens for city council wards that happens every 10 years are separate from the district the TIF district boundary. They're not the same thing. And the TIF district boundary wasn't tied to a specific ward boundary. And it won't be. The district boundary was tied to the geography that's out there because of the property that was benefiting from the improvements. Yeah.
I was going to add to that. So the city doesn't control where Merrimack Valley is because we're a whole entity. So like the TIF is not going to us.
That is absolutely an accurate statement. Right. And so the district's in the Merrimack Valley School District and will be until something changes. If the Merrimack Valley School District ever changes, which I'm not saying it will.
Do you think that, I have two things. I wanted to know if you had heard anything about the Rosses maybe putting in a bank over in that area, because we could lose our bank in Penacook. And then I wondered, a little bit off of that, why are there stoplights
crosswalk. Today, when I
Thank
went.
you.
Today-
I'm like, who is going to stop on a circle? Is there
Today-
crosswalks?
Today, when I came off the highway and was going around the circle to
And
get
you
to doggy
stopped?
daycare, yes, we were all stopped because there was somebody walking their dog across the, there is a crosswalk that
Right.
goes,
But that's for people crossing?
It is. Yep, it's called a pedestrian hybrid beacon, and it's only activated for people across. I couldn't imagine trying to cross without it.
Do you know about the bank?
So Lori and David are here. I didn't see them earlier. Lori and David Rossio, who are developing Exit 17, and they're in the back, and they should answer that question.
Or you can answer if you already know.
I think you already mentioned that part of the building that we have under construction now will be occupied by Service Credit Union.
Correct.
So that's the closest thing to a bank we have coming right now.
Okay.
So.
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to talk about Canal Street. I guess the only question I had about was the streets, and you're discussing kind of adding on-street parking. Would that require a widening of the current roads? Is there enough space?
Does it require a widening of?
Widening of the roads now?
No, it doesn't actually. The curb line will get adjusted slightly, but it's a pretty wide road out there, which contributes to people kind of coming off of, the other roundabout in Bosquen, coming down Harris Hill, shooting across and flying into Penacook Village. And what we're trying to do is say, okay, let's make this more village scale through here, and hence why we're exploring this right now. Yep.
So I have a question also on that slide. So today, a lot of the tenants, I believe, on those little apartment buildings that are across from the amphitheater that you're proposing? No.
Oh,
not
right
one.
here? Yep.
Yes. They park on the street. Are they going to be helped with some additional parking, or is it parking behind that they just don't utilize, or what's going to happen with that?
So you're talking about these apartment buildings that are right here, right? Yep, okay. So these two have very limited parking. I'm not quite sure what the situation is with this one and the dirt lot that's here. There is a little bit of parking that goes along the front of the property now. What we're tentatively showing is this configuration through here. The parking lot across from here, we're intending to make a public parking lot. We're trying not to make it specific to the park. We're trying to avoid issues that we have with other parks that have parking lots that get used for public parking, and some of the funding sources get annoyed by that, including one of the funding sources we're trying to use here with the federal government. So this will be a public parking lot. This is all going to be public parking through here. We could talk about.
there is extra parking if there's going to be parking on the other side of the street, too.
Yes.
So right now, this is right now.
Yeah, so there'd be parking on both the south side and the north side, yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, Terry.
The new project, potential new project that you didn't really touch on tonight, over by the Monitor, which ward is that? Is that Ward 2, or do you know? Do you guys know which ward that was?
Is it one?
Is it one?
Brent's saying it's his, so. Yeah.
So how does that affect, I was going to say in regard to that, with the continuation of that, expecting that they're going to ideally come toward the village with the development. So you have your development, proposed development with your housing, apartments, condos, whatever they're going to be along, what's the road going to be?
Whitney Road Extension,
Yeah, I
Yep.
guess, for lack of a better name.
or Monitor Drive, one or the other, yeah.
So, I mean, ideally, it makes sense that the more development, because these people are gonna need resources with those new housing. We're gonna need a lot more resources in our village to be able to support all the housing that's being brought in, and the apartment buildings.
And our schools.
In the schools, absolutely. What was going on with that? I did have a thought when you were going through that presentation over the development piece over at Whitney, but I'll come back to it if I can remember it.
I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly how you feel. Wendy?
So one of the, just tagging along with what you were saying, is does develop and get more housing and more people, I was told that the library situation, which I think is a wonderful solution to a current problem that we're having with that building, but that if we were to find a beautiful piece of property or be gifted one or something, that there was in the future the potential of building a library. Not that the city would do it, but we might be able to do something. You're clever, you can find it. But that was, I was told that that was always a possibility, like 10 or 15 years down the road or something.
So I think the
Because I
facility.
don't think the library's gonna be for the community that's growing, the growth of the community. I have
Especially if you want to
concerns-
encourage
I have
it,
concerns about that, but I don't have concerns about what they're doing with it right now. I think that that's a great solution to a problem that we're having right now.
So predicting the future is a challenging thing, and I think when and if a time comes that the new facility at Boys and Girls Club does not work or is no longer serving the community the way that the community needs to be served, whoever's around, whenever that day happens, whatever city council's here, whatever library trustees, all those folks. The city can certainly decide if they want to repurpose the space at the Boys and Girls Club. We can make it strictly recreational. We actually have an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club that if we're ever going to sell it, we'll give them first crack at buying it. So there's that there. But it's just like the current facility became a library in 1947, and it's I don't know if it's worked for a period of time, and will the day come for that facility down at Boys and Girls Club? It very well may, but I hope we get many, many decades of use out of it before we have to cross that bridge again.
I'm thinking about the need for a community center and a senior center, which is what we had before, and now we don't, and so it's like, I don't think you'll ever have a problem finding someone to use that space, but I do think, like the mayor has said, we have an aging community. We do, but now we have a lot of growth potential with, all the new housing. So it is one of the attractive things that we have in Penacook is our library.
Yep.
So,
Matt, can I ask a question in regard to the community center? The Boys and Girls Club, the prior population that was going to the Penacook Community Center, how many kids, families did it serve? Do you recall?
I do not know that number off the top of my head. I do know that they've relocated those families to other facilities and intending to bring them back here once this is all done. But I don't know the child count or the family count off the top of my head.
Because I'm curious, with the expansion of it and the larger footprint that it will offer, I'm assuming that they're going to be able to take on additional childcare?
I believe there is increased capacity, but I can't quote you a number on that. Yeah.
On the riverfront park, the picture you had up just a moment ago, on that image to the sort of left of that image, there is the smaller park over, sort of across the street over there.
Yeah.
Is anything going to be done to that one to sort of redevelop, adjust, change?
So there is. So the city council, when they appropriated the funds to do this, also appropriated for $200,000 for across the street. And we have not had the staff capacity to figure out exactly how we're going to use those funds yet. The parking lot's in poor condition. The pathways are in poor condition. There was some discussion about putting a kayak portage at this particular facility. And when we met back in June, and much to the relief of Bill, we said we probably shouldn't have it here because the hydro dam's down here and the buoy line for the dam's there. And if we put it a little further over here, it might make a lot of sense. So there's a discussion about, do we do the kayak portage there? At some point, our intention is to, once we kind of get this project's moving, but once it gets to a certain point, be able to take the design team that we have, which is GPI, and look more across the street. We've walked it with them. We've talked about some ideas. We want to do something. There's funds to do something. Maybe those funds can be used to leverage other funds, but we don't have a plan yet. But we know it needs attention.
So to follow up on that, who owns the closed bank?
So I was debating putting this in the presentation too, and I didn't because and here we are. The bank's been sold. The bank's been sold to an entity that intends to also move another business out of downtown Concord up here within the next year or so. So, which again is another barometer of things are moving in a very positive direction. And it's a retail tenant. But I'm not going to tell you anything else at this point.
I thought that was kind of public knowledge, and that they're not actually opening retail, they're doing warehousing.
I think it's being used, so I've only met with that tenant confidentially, and I'm not prepared to discuss anything else publicly, but the good news is, so, this one here attached to the medical office building, and the one that you can't really see, but right over here, it's starting to coalesce, which is nice. Yeah.
Just between us.
All right. Former city employees go last. What do you want?
I may be in the minority here, but when we did the planning last summer on this riverfront park, and I've also brought up Exit 17 development, is there not a way that we could put a dog park in? For those of us that live in this neck of the woods, we have to drive to the south end of Concord, and as a former city employee, one of the rabble-rousers that started the first dog park down there, I would be willing to help do whatever is needed to try to get one either at this site or some Exit 17 site. Sorely needed to save us driving down to the south end.
We did not include it here. It did come up in the conversation back in June. We did not include it because of it's a maintenance concern for us, and that's candidly what it is. The one that's at Terrell Park has been a challenge to maintain, and for that reason, the Parks and Rec Department and city administration shied away from that direction.
Well, it's a challenge, but there's a volunteer group that have done a heck of a job going in and cleaning up. I take my dog there once or twice a week, and I have never, ever seen a problem, except for the people that will leave a bag by the gate. And other than that, people bring their waste home with them. I don't know why they think it's a challenge.
Understood. Well, we can take under advisement. We can take under advisement.
May I?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen, we go down to Walt Park frequently, and there's a lot of dogs down there. There's a lot of owners who leave doggy bags on the path, and there's a lot of room over in the park. Could there maybe be some room over there that could be developed as a dog park?
It's something we can certainly take that under advisement. Think about that. Yep. Bill, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, Matt, back to the TIF district. What's the total assessed value in the TIF district now?
Oh, jeez.
And I think my math says that you released 50. So that's 50 of revenue. So what's that, about 2 million's worth of assessed value that they released?
It's a little more, it's probably around that number, yes. So we released $50,000 of tax revenue. The assessed value that goes with that, I'd have to do the math backwards, which I don't do math in front of people. But so that, I can't answer the question about what the value is off the top of my head, Bill. I really can't.
But that grows as the project's there.
It is, and I guess what I would say is the district is exceeding. The city is very conservative when we put put TIF district projects together because we want to make sure that we minimize the risk of failure. Lori and David have done a tremendous job with what they've done at their property, and they're doing other things up there. And so the TIF district is exceeding our expectations. It's growing faster. It's growing well. I'll know more about what it's worth when April 1st rolls around and the assessing department picks up everything, because, you know, in our original pro formas, the Wendy's wasn't, actually nothing else in our pro formas other than the market basket, the home goods, and the liquor store. That was it. And it's not because we didn't believe in Lori and David, but we wanted to be very conservative in case something happened in the macro economy and nothing else happened out there for any reason. But now that you have, you know, the Wendy's that's happening, the multi-tenant building that has Service Credit Union, Jersey Mike's, and the future additional tenant, if Lori and David's project goes forward further down the road, closer to the Boyce Highlands, where with the restaurant and potential pharmacy or retail, all those things are going to be picked up by the TIF district, and you know, we'll be able to revisit how much money actually gets released out of it going forward.
So we can look forward to more releases.
Yes, the anticipation is we understand the desire to try and release funds, so there's support to the taxpayers of Penacook. At the same time, we want to make sure the TIF has enough financial capacity to do what it's doing now, and if there's anything else that it needs to do in the future. So that's the balance that we're trying to strike.
Thank you.
Cool. You didn't, I know Irene asked a little bit of a question about we'll call it monitor way of the further development out there. Is there anything you can inform us about now? I know you didn't have a specific
I
question.
do now that
Do
you
now?
mentioned.
Oh, good. All right. Just wanted to run back to that.
So I guess, exactly. So I was going to say two things. So the first one is, so Kevin Lacasse, Dean Navaroli, Ed Roberge are all here. So they're here if you want to ask them some questions. There have been discussions between the city and Mr. Lacasse and his team about Whitney Road extension. I'm not comfortable talking about any details about that at this time. There's an awful lot of work that needs to be done in that regard. I will say that Kevin has been very forthcoming with information and very responsive. And I would say that the city has not been as responsive as I wish we could be, because we're a little short-staffed at the moment. But the conversations are happening, although they're slower than I think people would anticipate they would be. But outside of that, if you have questions for Kevin, and you want to talk to Kevin or Dean or Ed, I would say talk to them, but that's, I think, all I can really say publicly.
So I have a question. Sure. In regard to the development, I don't recall the actual proposed plans for the development. I mean, I remember it's a large number, 650 or something like that, if I recall. Is that going to be where the road is? The development going to be on the opposite side, so that the maintaining of the access to the river is still going to be available? So we're not utilizing riverfront property, which we're trying so hard to conserve throughout other areas, and restricting it through private property usage.
I'll let Kevin describe his project.
Yeah. So right now, all along that, where we border on Merrimack River, there is no public access to that river now. It's privately owned. There's no way to get down there. I mean, we're still going through the design development part of that, but we're looking at actually bringing public access to the Merrimack River through our location for everybody to use. That currently doesn't exist, as well as a trail system as well that doesn't exist.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Matt? Looks like we're good. So I'll just a couple of other quick comments. The Riverside Park. I know someone asked about Riverside Park also. Thank you, Matt. And that is the PVA actually also has collected funds that were provided. Thank you, from the public. For that project, and so the PVA will also be making a donation toward Riverside Park as well. Not the new Canal Street Park, but just to the Riverside Park. That's where the funds were collected from the public. So we'll be contributing to that, and we'll be watching that as it goes along. I did speak to David Gill in regard to that recently, and he said that folks are very interested in Riverside, and that the development, as Matt kind of alluded to, is going to go in conjunction with the work being done at Canal Street Park, so that they'll both kind of progress at a similar pace. So we will be expecting in the future to see something happening on that. The other thing I was going to mention is that I talked about the library a little bit, and I had also spoken to Todd Fabian about that. He said that potentially what we're going to do is starting out with the shelving that Wendy had mentioned, where we're talking about the 2,000 volumes or so, but that could increase, and that there is an opportunity perhaps to put permanent shelving in the space as well. So that's one thing. The other thing is that in October, just so you note, the circulation doubled in October, but the patronage actually remained flat. So the foot traffic is the same. So we're not really sure what the reason is for that yet. Probably when we get to year end, we'll know the statistics. But the point of my saying that is, go out and use the library, because that's the current branch library, right? So well, right. Right. As much as you can continue to actually, because they do count foot traffic. So if you go into the library, that's an important element of this going forward as well. What we're hoping is that with the new space, as Matt had described it, and again, if the council does approve this project on Monday's meeting, that we'll be able to attract more people to the library, to the branch library. So that's the goal and the hope, is to make it more accessible. Potentially it's in a great location, and the synergy with the Boys and Girls Club could mean that you get a lot more patrons that way. So that's kind of what the hope is. So it's a starting point, really, and then hopefully we'll see what the use is, and then there'll be a great argument to be made for, yeah, we need permanent shelves. Yeah, we need more volumes. That would be great. So we'll all hope for that. Did you have a question?
About the library, just wondering, looking at the building, is there any reason that they didn't put an elevator in and then make the entire, make a whole other floor? That could be a whole huge library on top.
Wendy
So that's a really good question, and I asked that at the Boys and Girls Club meeting, and the building is not made to have a second floor.
But it has a second.
It's not designed to have a second floor. But that would be, I think that's a great idea.
No, she's talking about the existing.
Oh, the existing one?
No,
The new one. No,
Oh,
she's talking about the new
Boys
one.
and Girls Club.
It'd be a great size,
Goes
wouldn't it?
up.
This was the Boys and Girls Club's decision, the design and what the layout was that they wanted, and that's basically what they went with. Now, as to what they're designing now, could you ever go up on that? I don't really know. I'm not sure, but yeah. Yeah, probably not. This is, and I assume, but the other thing to point out is that if, in fact, again, this sort of, I'll call it condominium space goes forward, and the city council does decide to go forward and have this constructed for the new branch library location, that piece of property would be already very, I think, important to the Boys and Girls Club. You talked about expansion. So if, in fact, those needs that you mentioned, Wendy, earlier continue to increase, they would increase for the Boys and Girls Club as well. So I think they would be very interested in acquiring that space should that happen. And then the library discussion, I think, will begin anew. That we'd if there's so many patrons, there's not enough room, we need more room and space, then, yeah, those discussions will happen, I think, at that point in time. Chris, yeah?
Have there been any discussions? They said the library's going to be open 28 hours. The 28 hours it's open now.
No, it's only open 10 hours.
No, it's open.
Okay,
So
well,
that's how
whatever
foot
hours
traffic
it's open,
increase.
working people cannot go there because it's not open those hours. Are they going to expand those to weekends or nights? Because otherwise, what's the
Yeah, I don't know if do you happen to know, Matt?
I don't. I just know that the budget presumed 28 hours per week, and I think we haven't gotten to the point of setting what those 28 hours are.
I think we'll be able to have input as a community on that going forward, certainly, that if we, make that request, that hopefully the city would be able to respond in that regard.
Well, and also to tie in on that, based on the needs, there may need to be additional hours that the library is allocated for open. I mean, the Concord Public Library is open a lot longer for that, and with our growing population and expansion, I'm see that we're gonna have that need as well.
Yeah, I hope so. And again, as I said, I hope that, if this new location happens, that will draw more people in. But that's why I made the point a moment ago that really does matter, that the foot traffic to the branch really is an important aspect of this. That helps to justify the costs and to justify the existence of the branch, frankly. So, yeah. Wendy?
And as somebody who's been volunteering for the library for 30 years, I will tell you that to judge the use of the library based on the fact that we had it closed for 2 years for the pandemic, there's no parking or very little parking, it's kind of, you have to have it open to then, and used, so then you can judge it and say, gee, do we really need it? And the fact is we do need it, we do want it, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I love the Boys and Girls Club idea, I completely support it. I do wish it was bigger, but it's not. But it's keeping Penacook with library services.
Yeah.
And that's my priority. I want to make sure we always have library services. And 10 hours isn't enough because the 2 days it's open are the 2 days I'm taking care of my mother. So that's just like, I can't even go lose it. So, yeah, so.
Well, I want to, oh, yes.
Really quick, just slightly off topic, but not
Sure.
really. Will there be a follow-up meeting regarding Monitor Way? Yeah, I know there was one a few months ago, but will there be another one?
Yeah, I mean, our plan was to request to be able to give another presentation. Once we're a little bit further down the road, there's still a lot of things, as Matt had mentioned, that we've got to kind of work with the city on, and a little bit further things on our development end. But we definitely plan on keeping you guys informed and would, well, love the opportunity.
How do you feel about a library?
You might need your own library over there.
It wouldn't be very big.
Anything else? I just, one thing before we forget, let's give Matt Walsh a round of applause. Being a little bit under the weather, and I was hoping you'd be even a little bit more psychedelic with your cold medicine than you were, but that was fine. You did a great job as usual, and we thank you very much for coming out. And thank all of you for coming out tonight as well, and continue to look for more announcements from the PVA on future meetings. Have a wonderful set of holidays coming up as well. Enjoy. Thank you. Yep.
And Brent,